Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown Podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Bosarge, as always, with my co-host, Shane P. Hallam. Shane, we are 98 days, 22 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds away from the 2022 NFL Draft.
Draft order set up. First round of playoffs in the books. You're wearing the Bengals garb after your big victory, traveling to Cincinnati. First live game in Cincinnati for you. How you feeling, Brian?
Man, I feel like $1,000,000.
31 years.
31 years, man. I mean, I was 11 years old the last time I watched the Bengals win a playoff game, and to get to see it in that crowd, feel that energy, man, it was awesome. And hopefully they'll continue it on this week. You know, bit more of a challenge this week against the Titans, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
they
that'll be fun.
only a three, like a little over a 3-point dog. You know, so not like they're a double-digit dog or anything here. But
look, my Steelers almost got it done as a double-digit dog.
I mean, they almost covered.
They almost covered
the 13.5 points.
Look, they were winning at one point. That was better than I thought, so I'll take it.
Shane, with the wild card round over, we talked about the full draft order last week, 1 to 18. So we'll just quickly run through picks 19 through 24. The Eagles will pick 19th in the draft. Your Steelers picking 20th this year. New England picking 21st. Las Vegas, the Raiders picking 22nd. The Cardinals, despite being the last team to be without a loss this year, get knocked out. They'll be picking 23rd. And Dallas, the only true upset victim in the first round of the playoffs, thanks to their questionable play calling.
Yeah.
We'll say they bow out and they will pick 24th. So 8 teams left. The Bengals are one of them. Happy to see that.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens this weekend. We'll get a couple more in the books and start to get a really good picture of how this draft is looking at the back end. So yeah, I'm excited to see that. And all-star games are heating up. I'm coming out tomorrow with a preview for the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. So yeah, it's a kind of a busy time here coming up for us.
It sure is. And speaking of busy times, this guy's always busy. He is the NFL draft NFL writer for Yahoo Sports, and he is a first-time caller, long-time listener here, Eric Edholm, joining us from Yahoo Sports tonight. Eric, man, thanks a lot for coming on.
Long-time listener, and I don't think I've ever heard you use the phrase a little more than a 3-point favorite. I like how you said that, or a 3-point dog. Just a little bit more, just a little bit. Yeah, I like that.
Hey, we do our best around here to try to minimize what it really actually is.
Instill confidence. That's right. Yes.
We got to do what we got to do, man. And Eric, I mean, we wanted to have you on because you cover this year round, kind of like we do, but more high profile. Senior Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm sure I'll see you down here in Mobile, right? You've already been hitting me up in the DMs looking for the hot new barbecue joints.
I know, and I realize you got to talk to the people who live there, not just the ones who've been coming to Mobile for 20 years and blah. Because I'm not, I've been coming for forever, but the people who are the true locals who understand, yeah, that place is all right, but this is the spot. So I knew you were the man to talk to.
That's right. And I pride myself on that. I've never steered anybody wrong
when
it comes to seafood or barbecue. So I don't be afraid to reach out if you want to try something a bit off the beaten path, so to speak, Eric.
Oh yeah. If oysters are involved, I'm definitely in. I'm a seafood guy all the way through. So I love off the beaten path. I love anything where I feel just a little more special than my normally dull life.
All right, let's get right into this draft class, and I wanted to just come out and just with a broad question here. Every year we look at these draft classes, and there's always going to be that one position group that sticks out as really stacked and one that's maybe not so much. So kind of give us in your opinion on what is that deep position group this year, and then what is one that you're if you don't get them up high, you're probably not getting them.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think receivers is strong again. I don't know if it's quite what we've seen the last 2 years, but it's pretty good. I like tight ends, but I wouldn't say there's that alpha dog or one or two clear number one guys. So it's deep enough, but I would probably lean toward offensive tackle and corner as two positions, especially two positions that we don't always see elite depth at or elite talent at the top. And I think, those two spots could have both. Certainly tackle does. I think the interior offensive line is kind of there's some guys I really like and may not be tremendous after a certain point. The edge rushers, I think, is a pretty good group. Tell me if I'm wrong. And I'm just trying to make sure I'm not overlooking one. Let me think of what the weakest would be. Safety drops off a cliff after a certain point, I think. I think there's some pretty decent safeties in this group, but I may not love outside of that day two range. I don't know that there's a whole lot that I'd be pounding the table for, except for maybe some, role specific guys. So I don't know. What would you guys say? Am I missing something here?
No, I think you kind of hit it on the head there with the safety class for sure, because, I don't know how all the safeties that got invited to the Senior Bowl felt about that Athletic article that came out right when they started sending out invites. But, Jim Nagy all but said in that article that this safety class was crap. And then one of the first players they invited was a safety. So it's like, well, what can you do?
The cream of the crap, right?
Sorry, Eric. I'm a fantasy guy. You've been on my fantasy show before. So you mentioned the receiver class that we don't have that Jamar Chase alpha player,
right?
And things kind of heating up a little bit today. Mel Kiper didn't have Traylon Burks in his first round, and the fantasy community is kind of scrambling here as to how many receivers are going to go in the first round. Who kind of are the guys that could be elite? Kind of give me your sense, I guess, of where you think NFL teams are looking at these receivers and how it might shake down.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think the talent, the long-term projection is pretty strong for this group overall, but we've got a couple hurdles to come over, right? I mean, there may not be that clear number one, as you said, and there's nobody in that, I wouldn't even say in that Waddle, Chase, Devontae Smith range. I don't know that I can fall in love with anybody in this class to that level. I had, I think my number 2 overall player was Kyle Pitts, and I think 3 or 4 was Chase last year, and Waddle was right behind him or something. So I had pretty bold, not bold, but big grades on those guys. I won't have anything like that. In addition, we also have the injuries to the 2 Bama guys. That's obviously gonna affect some sort of projection as to when Williams and Mechie. Did Mechie even declare? I guess I may have missed it. Okay, I figured he did. That's why I was, So those 2 guys obviously coming to the league a little bit nicked up and probably in some rehab early on, maybe start the year on PUP, whatever. So in addition, you also have some guys who are, like Traylon Burks, I think is a gas to watch. I love the guy. I mean, he's big. He could run. He's a separator. He does a little bit of everything. They use him as a runner. He's thrown the ball several times. I mean, there's a lot to like about him. But at the same time, will everybody in the NFL have that same kind of, Deebo Samuel role for him? Or are they going to say, we're going to make you a Y receiver, like a big slot, or I guess you'd say a Z. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the system, but you know what I mean? So there's that. There's also the Drake London injury. He's a guy who I think, if he can test and do well, he would have, shown out to the point where I think we'd already be talking about him as one of the top tier guys. He just hasn't had that ability yet. And so, I guess there's a little bit of a lack of luster on it because of those facts from a fantasy standpoint. But I still think that, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jahan Dotson should have some sort of role early. I think David Bell is going to be a really good player right away. And two other guys that just popped into my head too would be Justin Ross and George Pickens. Like, in a normal year, if they'd have played a full lot of games, we might be talking about them as one of the top receivers. As it is, they come in with question marks. So it's more based on like long-term upside view than it is immediate fantasy dividends, I would think. But that's, somebody will obviously step up, and it just, depends on where they fall.
Eric, we're a little over 3 months away, maybe 3 months and a couple weeks away from the draft. So we'll say this. Let's ask this question on January 19th, 2022. How many quarterbacks are in the first round, and who are they?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, obviously, post Senior Bowl week, we'll have a much better idea. Daniel Jones, for instance, was like my number 72 overall player the year he came out. I had a slightly higher grade on Drew Lock, I think, and, maybe one or two other guys. So, but you could even tell coming out of Senior Bowl week that there were teams that liked him. Maybe not Giants loved him, but there were others who, had he fallen a little bit farther, we might still have seen him in round one. I wouldn't have necessarily predicted that at this point, pre-Senior Bowl that year. That said, I think Kenny Pickett's going round one. I'm not 100% convinced that. Let me couch what I say here. I don't know about Matt Corral. The assumption has kind of been he's in that round one projection. He could be. He very well could be. I don't know that that's set in stone, so I'll put him as a maybe. And I think I would also say that Sam Howell is a maybe, because he's actually got maybe more love in the scouting community than I realized at one point. So the more calls and people I talked to about him, I think there's still a feeling that, he kind of added a dimension to his game. But, what if Malik Willis puts on a show between now and April? What if people are convinced, yeah, he's a project, but he's not as far away as you guys think? Or what if Carson Strong's knee comes back with clean medical evaluation? That dude could shoot it. He looks like an NFL quarterback to me. And he did a lot at the line. He had a lot of say over, checks and protections and things like that. Stuff that, Willis and Corral and Howell didn't really do. How does the league view Desmond Ritter? I think probably more of a second, third round guy, but it only takes one team. Jason Campbell was a first round pick because he was viewed as steady, smart, reliable, with maybe some untapped reserves still there a little bit. So I would guess the number should be lower than this, but I think it ends up kind of like 3, and that we maybe have, someone go in that 31 or 32 pick to a Super Bowl team that ends up trading out around 1 or something like that. I don't know. I'm fascinated to hear what you guys think.
No, that's kind of where we've been at. We between me and Shane, I think we're a little higher maybe on Matt Corral.
Okay.
But I just released my top 200 board today, and Malik Willis was somewhere in the 80 range for me.
Right.
I
get it. Yeah.
No, I've seen him play 3 times, once in person, twice on tape. In the 2 games I watched on tape, Syracuse and the Ole Miss game, he was sacked 15 times.
Yep.
In those 2 games, he had no pocket awareness whatsoever, but saw him at the Lending Tree Bowl against Eastern Michigan. Looked like one of the best quarterbacks I'd ever seen throw the football live in person. Yeah. And it's like, that's the kind of inconsistency issues that bugged me. It bugged me with Josh Allen a few years ago. I was wrong on him. It bugged me with Daniel Jones in his draft class. I feel like I'm a little vindicated on my mid-third round grade I had on Daniel Jones. Maybe not the mid-third round grade I had on Josh Allen, though. But, so I guess we'll see with Willis on that. But I definitely think you could make that argument that of all the 6 quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl, that Malik Willis not only has the most to gain, but the most to lose of all 6 quarterbacks.
100%. I agree. I suspect he'll come out of there with a bit of a bump. I think that's more of a gut feeling than anything else, because we don't know obviously how he's going to perform. But there've been, like Josh Allen did not, I don't think, play all that well in Mobile, or at least that first practice was wild, right? And then it got a little better and a little better, and there were just, the velocity. You see him throw the ball, and you see how he looks out there, and you think that, that's he's passed that test, he's aced that. But some of the high throws and the scatter shot accuracy, I was like, I don't know, And even Daniel Jones is the same way too. And at those practices, he got MVP of the game, but boy, I thought he missed some easy throws. I thought Drew Lock was more dialed in than he was. So, you can't use that as your total evaluation. But like you said, you've seen him enough to know that the high end is so enticing. The low end reminds you of where he is in his development.
My prediction is I think Malik Willis is going to come out of Mobile similar to Colin Kaepernick, where it was like NFL coaching really seemed to progress him, right? And I feel like that's maybe that one piece that Willis is lacking. So I'm interested. I'm definitely interested there too. Eric, let me ask you about Georgia. I feel like we should probably talk the Bulldogs a little bit more than we have after that national championship victory. The three defensive linemen, Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, I have kind of back to back in my defensive line rankings. All do very different things. How do you kind of see their stocks playing out? I think they've been three that I've had trouble kind of pegging where they're going to go, or what kind of teams they may fit onto.
Yeah, I mean, the one who fascinates me the most is probably Trayvon Walker, I would say, just because, he's just an unusual player, and I think there's just going to be a sense of, like you were asking earlier, if you don't get this position up high, you shouldn't even draft them. I feel that way about certain players too. And sometimes, you see, one specific player, even in a deep group, just look kind of so much different than everybody else. He's got that length. He's got enough mass where he can kick inside, play outside. Hell, Georgia had him, spying some quarterbacks at times. So he did some very unusual things. And, he's one of those kind of Baltimore Ravens, New England Patriots type of guys that, seems to fill a lot of roles and do a lot of things well. And I think he's fascinating. It's also fascinating to see, where does Davis end up? Like, what is he, because he's probably a two-down player in the NFL like he was in college. And people say, oh, he only played, 20-something snaps a game. That's true. Georgia also had the deepest rotation of the country, right? Jermaine Johnson had to transfer out to finally show he could play. Different position, obviously, nose tackle, but still the idea holds that, their depth chart was so loaded, right? You could take him off the field comfortably in passing downs because you had talents behind him, right? So that didn't bother me as much. I think his stamina should be okay. He's an unusually good athlete for that man, that size of man. But what's the value of a two-down nose tackle these days? I don't know. I really don't know. We haven't had a lot of those types of players populate the upper reaches of the draft. So is he a first-round pick? It wouldn't shock me if he was. It also wouldn't stun me if he fell out, just because of the value and the need of that spot. So, yeah, they've got a pretty incredible talent on that defense, and to see it all kind of come together this year was really fascinating. It starts up front, but they have some good players on the back end too, and it's amazing when you think that if Johnson had stayed and they hadn't had those underclassmen leave, we probably would have looked at the greatest unquestioned defense of all time. It's already in the discussion, or at least, up there, I would think.
I question Dexter Lawrence getting drafted as high as he did a couple of years ago. And
good
to
example.
Me, I think they're very similar in what they do. Maybe Jordan Davis is more athletic than Dexter Lawrence. But, I question that value as well. And he still went the top 15. Good old Dave Gettleman.
God love him.
Let's bring it. Devontae Wyatt will be at the Senior Bowl along with some other Georgia linebackers. who are a couple of players that maybe aren't getting that hype, Eric, that you are just so looking forward to seeing in those one-on-ones and during Senior Bowl practice?
You talking about Georgia players?
No,
or
no, in general.
And these are guys you said that haven't
maybe aren't getting that maybe people that everybody's not really tuned into.
Yeah, I mean, I think the draft guys know him, and obviously the people who pay attention to this stuff year round. But Tariq Woolen, last I saw, he had an invitation. I believe he's still planning on going. Texas San Antonio corner, big kid, 6'4", 205 pounds, really long arms, fascinating athletic traits. Former receiver, you saw some rawness to his game at times, but he was a willing tackler. I think he's got a really neat template to start from. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the projection of like a Kello Witherspoon when he came into the league, but I think he's more physical than Witherspoon. So, he's going to be able to actually engage a lot more of that length and not just be somebody who breaks up, jump balls and things like that. So I think you can use him as a zone corner or a press corner. He gave us some catches in the games I watched. There was like a miscommunication. I think it was in the Western Kentucky game where he had just gotten back into the lineup, if I recall, too. So that may have played a part. There's some hesitancy about there was a rub route, who had who, where was the responsibility. It's hard to know on tape whether that's him or the other guy, but still, you saw enough of those moments where you thought he's still going to require a little bit of polish, and guys like Joejuan Williams, for instance, haven't really panned out yet. I would say he's sort of in that same vein. So, it could go either way, but he's got traits that you absolutely cannot teach. And there's something about him that kind of excites me. And I guess I haven't watched the Fayetteville State kid, Joshua Williams, but I've heard some people kind of say like, Nagy's all in on him. I haven't talked to Jim about him. I always love to see kind of the small school guys who, everybody assumes are going to be kind of fish out of water because, look, Jeremy Chin went down there and played great. And, the Lenore Ryan kid played great a couple years ago, Kyle Duggar. To me, it's outstanding when those guys can go down there with a chip on their shoulder and hang with the big boys and hold their own.
I remember a corner from Washburn, Corey Ballantine.
Yeah.
He had his ups and downs during the week for sure, but he mostly had a solid week. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I haven't watched Joshua Williams either, so my first exposure to him will be in Mobile.
Right.
So, and what a better I'll be if he gets murdered in the one-on-ones down there, I probably don't need to go back and watch him anymore. That's the way I'm going to look at it.
The effort it would take to track down that tape would not be worth, unless he goes down there and balls out and has, 3 picks and all that stuff. I think you're better off moving on to somebody else you can get access to.
Well, speaking of small school players at the Senior Bowl, maybe a little more high profile, but I love Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle from Northern Iowa, Bernard Raymond, the offensive tackle from Central Michigan. How do you think they're going to fare down there? Do you think both those guys have a shot at first round draft capital? Maybe even top half if things go really well.
Trevor Penning's a first round pick, I believe. I feel pretty confident in that. I don't know. You could always have some medical situation that we don't know about or test, way below what we're expecting. But athleticism is not the issue. He's a good kid too. He plays with some feistiness and he's got this unbelievable frame. Now, he may not quite test the way Spencer Brown did, his Buffalo Bills 3rd round pick, who went to UNI as well, and they played together. But he's bigger, and I think he's got more upside. I mean, Spencer Brown's a nice player. He's cracked the Bills rotation a little bit. So, he's obviously somebody they continue to like. I think NFL teams are going to view Penning as, despite the lower level of competition, a possible day one starter at left tackle. So I think that puts him in the top 20. That's my guess if I had to estimate. Now, it's interesting that Raymond played at a higher level, obviously a group of 5 school, but had 2 big tests right off the bat, LSU and Mizzou. Thought he handled himself, well in those. He's still raw in the sense that he's a, former tight end looking like a guy who still has some, some polish that needs to be added or whatever. But boy, I mean, he looks like a unbelievably, he's got natural athletic ability that can't be taught. I mean, he's got the size. I could see guard or tackle for him. I've heard both. So first round, borderline, probably at this stage, I would just guess top 50, if that makes, somewhere between 25 and 50, I guess, if I had to say.
Just taking a brief glimpse at the Senior Bowl rosters. These are some potential one-on-one matchups we could see with those two. Logan Hall, Dominique Robinson, Arnold Ebiketie, Myjai Sanders, Azizi Otamiwo, and Boye Mafe are some potential one-on-one matchups there on the outside.
I'm just going to refer to them as the last 2 guys from that. So I don't. That's my way of getting out of saying that. I can do Ebiketie. I can't do anything else though. That's yeah, but those matchups should be fantastic, right? I mean, you guys are like me. I mean, I love to park in front of those battles and watch them go at it. And guys lose. I mean, I watched Aaron Donald lose 1 battle down there, all week. So it happens, right? Yeah. Who was that poor guard he beat up on the first day down? And it was they used to have those practices out in Fairhope. And Donald just went off on, it was the Baylor kid, Cyril Richardson. Is that right?
Yeah, Cyril Richardson.
Yeah.
I felt bad for the kid afterward. I mean, he was just mauled, and that was the moment where Aaron Donald went from undersized guy to draft crush of everybody. So yeah, those one-on-one battles are fantastic. And yeah, I think we'll have some good ones. Maybe the Senior Bowl D-line class is a little leaner than years past. I don't know. Am I wrong about that?
To me, my higher ranked edge guys are all on the American team, so we won't see the matchups. I mean, I'm high on Kingsley and Igbare, Jermaine Johnson, those 2 guys, but they're on the other squad, so we'll have to look at their one-on-ones with the other group.
Right.
Last question for me. Shane will have another one, then we'll let you go. Day 3 guy, maybe even a late day 3 guy. Who are you beating that table for? Who is that deep Eric Edholm sleeper that's going to go on day 3 of the draft?
Yeah, let me think here. Give me a position. You throw me a position, I'll see if or at least because I'm just struggling to come up with one right now here.
All right, you assume that guys get drafted in that range. They're going to be special teams guys probably first, roster guys second. So give me a linebacker who you're going to beat the table for on day 3.
Okay, linebacker. I'll come up with one here. I mean, to me, may not be a linebacker. The Troy Anderson kid from Montana State. Have you guys watched him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's this debate going on. How do you use the guy best? And he's clearly an athlete. He's got something going on. I don't know if I would call him a sleeper necessarily. I guess he is because he went to Montana State and he's a, sort of position projection guy or whatever, but he's just fascinating. I don't know what to make of him yet. I don't have a final say on him, but I want to see what he does right in the NFL. Is he an offensive player? Is he a defensive player? Is he strictly a special teamer? So he's one that kind of fascinates me. Maybe people are sleeping on the Oklahoma linebacker too, Brian Asamoah, a lot. I just like him. I think he's a good, solid player. I don't know that he'll ever be a Pro Bowl player, and maybe he sneaks into day 2. I don't know, but boy, I'm shocked there hasn't been a little bit more buzz on him. Now he's not a big guy, but I think he'll run well enough. I think he'll be a multi-positional linebacker. I think he can play, in sub packages too. I just think he's a solid all-around football player that people might be sleeping on a little bit.
All right, last one. I'll kind of put you on the spot too, I guess.
Good.
That's why you're here, right?
Tap dancing.
So give me your prediction. Senior Bowl week's over, game's over. Outside of anyone we've talked about so far, so give me someone we haven't touched on. Who do you think is going to have the biggest buzz coming out of that week? Who's going to be the player that everyone's talking about and hyping up because of how they play?
Who is the Deebo Samuel of the 2022 Senior Bowl?
Yeah, I like that. I'm trying to think. There was somebody else who kind of came out of nowhere a couple of years ago that I didn't go last year. So, all right. So obviously we've already mentioned Willis, so it can't be him. How? Oh, sorry, just had a pop-up video. Apologize about that. Good question. I would say probably. So I've been banging his drum all season long. Probably too much, to be honest, but Nebraska's JoJo Doman, that's another linebacker I guess I could have picked too. And he did a little bit of everything for an underman defense up there. And is his hand going to be okay? Is he going to stay in the game or not? I don't know, but he's one that I think could be, a really interesting riser because he is that special teams guy. He's a hustle guy. I think he could maybe walk out of this week with some buzz. The other one, you kind of mentioned his name earlier in the D-line drills. I mean, Myjai Sanders, I think in those one-on-one drills has a chance to surprise people because, that he was sort of played out of position this year a little bit. And obviously it was a team that a lot of people started watching. He might be like Alex Highsmith. I guess if I had to pick somebody who could be like a similar comp from a positional miscast guy, right? They were both kind of playing inside like a 4-eye spot. And, Highsmith had to play out of position because they needed him to play there at Charlie. This is the same with Sanders in Cincinnati in some respects. And I think more on the edge, being able to stand up a little bit, showing off his athleticism. I don't know that I love him as a player, but I do like him quite a bit. And I remember last year feeling pretty good had he come out. So, factoring that in as well, he could be somebody who maybe bubbles up a little. The other kid too, I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day in media. I forget who it was. Somebody in the draft world. We were saying that, everybody wants to see Christian Watson too from North Dakota State. He was Trey's deep guy in 19 and just that length, is he, I mean, I don't know. Is he Tim Patrick or something? Or, you know what I mean? Like what I'm trying to think of a guy, Equanimous or somebody like that, those long, deep threat kind of guys. I can't wait to see how he fares against some of these corners.
Shane called him this year's Cooper Kupp the other day on Draft Countdown.
Yeah. I mean, not style-wise.
Not style-wise.
Right.
But the guy who just shows up and belongs, right?
That small school player who I think can be a number one, with enough grooming. I think he could do that.
Yeah, I mean, tracks the ball well. He's got length. He gets on top of people. I like him. He's really interesting.
Well, Eric, we can't thank you enough for taking the time out tonight, coming on, talking the draft. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks down here in Mobile. We'll talk the finer ports of some barbecue and some seafood when you get down here.
I'm looking forward to it. Dinner on me. And thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
That was Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports taking that time to come on tonight and chop up the draft with us.
Awesome. He's one of the best. So that's all.
Yeah,
that's
no doubt about it. Everybody go follow him on Twitter. Is there an underscore in his name?
There is Eric _Edholm. His mock drafts are some of my favorite. Just explanations, and he really gets into it. Like he's such a good dude. So give him a follow if you haven't.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, Shane. So Monday marked the deadline for the underclassmen to declare. I tried my best to go through and see who we haven't already talked about. I know I missed some of we'll call them more obscure names that may have declared. So we're going to kind of hit some high points here, and I'm just going to leave off some of these names that guys who declared but didn't really play for the teams that they declared for. But let's start with interior offensive lineman 1, definitely center 1 in this class, Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. I'm going to will it in every mock draft I do from here on out. I'm going to will him to Cincinnati. No, but I'm going to try. Tyler Linderbaum, Iowa, the Bengals' dream scenario in the 2022 NFL draft.
Yeah, look, that'd be nice. Too good this year, you know. I just can't do it. But I still think he's on that top 10 fringe. If he can be the first center in 50 years to go in the top 10, I mean, that'd be a pretty big jump. So he is that good, legit.
4 corners added to the list this week. One stands out above the others. Coward Gordon from Washington. He may have actually declared before this week, and I just missed it. His teammate Trent McDuffie, we talked about him. I think Coward Gordon's not as good as McDuffie. I don't know if Gordon's a top one. He's probably a fringe day 2 guy. But
I think we disagree there.
Oh,
yeah, I have Kyler Gordon pretty high.
I might actually have him higher than I'm giving him credit for, maybe confusing him with someone else. The 3 other corners that declared: Jalen Armour Davis from Alabama, Isaac Taylor Stewart from Southern Cal. Neither one of those guys probably going to be in that top 100 range. Jalen Armour Davis was injured for most of the season, or at least at the end of the season there.
Yeah.
And Cordell Flott from LSU entered the draft as well. He's actually, both him and Armour Davis are both local to the Mobile High School area here. Flott, I believe, played at Saraland High School, and Jalen Armour Davis played at St. Paul's High School here in Mobile. So those 4 corners have entered the draft. Other than Coward Gordon, any of the other 3 pop to you?
I think Isaac Taylor Stewart's probably the best of that group. Now I haven't watched Flott at all, so I don't know. He's not someone I picked up on either. But I think Isaac Taylor Stewart he's a good kind of press corner. I think he's played some safety for them at times. Bigger guy, pretty stiff. So he's someone I think with good workouts could rise maybe into that top 100 range. I feel like it's pretty crowded at this point, but he's probably the only one.
Trayvon Walker from Georgia declares. We've talked about him a lot there with Eric. Probably one of the more versatile defensive linemen in this class. Size wise, can play inside, can play outside.
Can I make a bold prediction?
Bold prediction.
I think he's going to be the first D-line off the board. That's
D-line 1.
D-line 1. I'm not going to have it in my mock coming out on Monday, but I feel like I think he could do it. I think the NFL's going to do it.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about another mock draft that we saw come out a little bit later with something else, but that one had DeMarvin Leal at 32. So, and he's been universally up to this point considered D-line 1. True. So, maybe not as bold as you think there.
Maybe not.
A couple of edge guys declared, and I think, well, like I said, I'm pretty sure both of these had happened long before this week. But Drake Jackson, Southern Cal, a guy we were both higher on before the season, but kind of tailored off a little bit this year. I think we both still probably have him in that 2nd to 3rd round range.
Yeah, I do. We're gonna see. I need to see workouts, I think, on him to see if he's legit.
Alex Wright from UAB, who I have no clue about whatsoever, but I see him listed at 6'7", 269. I love that size and frame. So I guess, I'll go back and watch some of the UAB games I have and see if there's anything to Alex Wright.
Yeah, I actually like when I saw his name come across, I had a couple notes on like just him standing out, right? And we didn't. I don't know if we had him on our list, or I don't think so. So yeah, he's someone I have to go back and watch too. But I'm intrigued.
3 guards we had declared this week. William Dunkel, who someone asked me in a DM on Twitter, where we're at on him. No clue. Joshua Edzwudu from North Carolina. Got nothing. And we had a question. We normally take questions at the end of the show, but it seems like this is a good time to talk about it. G10 asked in the comments, heard Dane Brugler mention Cameron Jurgens, center from Nebraska. Have you seen him? If so, what do you think? What's his draft stock? Thanks, guys. Love the show. His name also came across the declaration wire this week. So, Shane, I have no opinion on Cam Jurgens yet. Do you?
I did watch him. I think you and I talked about it a little bit when he declared. I watched him a little bit. I bumped him up right now to center 5. I mean, I think he's good. Like he's a nice physical center with, he's small enough that he's kind of athletic and can move. He's a little bit shifty in that way. So I really like him. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up as center too. I think him, Luke Fortner from Kentucky going to the Senior Bowl is a big opportunity. I still like some of the Alec Lindstrom and Donovan West, who we've talked about before. So I think Jurgens is kind of in that mix for center 2 and for day 2, if all goes well.
2 offensive tackles declared this week. One is Luke Tenuta from Virginia Tech, 6'9", 322. I believe he's at the Shrine game, if I'm not mistaken. And the other, of course, is OT1 Evan Neal, or OT1 for us. It may not necessarily be OT1 around the league. We're going to talk about that a little bit later too. But Evan Neal, Luke Tenuta, one of those things is not like the other.
Yeah, no, I need to go back and watch Tenuta a little more, or I'll just wait for the Shrine game probably if he's going there and hit that up.
2 linebackers declared. One, obviously, us and damn near everybody else who watches this draft for the draft. Nakobe Dean, Georgia linebacker, probable first-round pick. I would imagine maybe top half of the first round. So no surprise that he declared. But coming off probably his best career game, I think you could say, Christian Harris from Alabama, tremendous game against Georgia in the championship game, declares for the draft. So were you surprised by Christian Harris entering the draft, or you feel like this is the right timing, strike while the iron's hot?
No, I think that game really solidified him. And I think the other thing he always had going for him was his athletic ability, right? He's probably going to be the most athletic linebacker in that first-round mix. And I think that Kobe Dean, who is my linebacker 1, if Dean has a bad combine, he's smaller than Harris. I think Harris could end up linebacker 1 and go fairly high because he flashed in that game and has the athletic ability and size. The NFL, I think, just wants that a little bit more. So I think this is going to be a really tight race between those 2, and maybe toss Devin Lloyd in there for who's going to be the top linebacker.
Speaking of strike while the iron's hot, we had 3 safeties declared, 2 of which for Ron McKinley III from Oregon, Dane Belton from Iowa. Have to go back and watch those myself.
McKinley's really good.
Okay. McKinley has the Shane stamp of approval.
Yeah.
I have to go.
I have a safety 7 right now. I think he's a day 2 guy.
Okay.
Small, but he's a playmaker.
But defensive MVP of the national championship game, Lewis Seen. We talked to Jeff Risden last week. He is all in on Lewis Seen going to Detroit with the Rams pick in the first round. If he's still on the board there. Safety 2 for you, Shane?
Safety 2 for me. I think he's a first rounder. He'll be in my first round of my mock on Monday.
He's moved up to safety 2 on my board as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wide receivers we added to the underclassmen board this week. 3 of them from the University of Alabama. Surprise. Their wide receiver room is decimated. 1 of which was no surprise, despite tearing his ACL in the national championship game. No surprise that Jamison Williams could still end up in the first round pick despite the torn ACL. A mild surprise maybe was John Mechie III. I think we both thought even when healthy this year, he wasn't as an elite of a talent as he showed that he could be last season. And a head scratcher a bit here is their slot receiver, Slade Bolden, the 5'11", 191 receiver from Alabama, declares. Comments and thoughts on the Crimson Tide trio of wideouts entering.
I think Jameson Williams still be an easy first rounder because of the 4.3 speed and size and height. And then, Slade Bolden and John Mechie. I don't know. Maybe I'm too low on John Mechie. I think they're both day 3 guys. Like Mechie maybe has some upside. I actually have Bolden ranked 1 spot ahead of Mechie in my rankings. It's because I just think Slade Bolden is a good slot receiver. And there's actually a number of teams that need a slot receiver, and there's not a ton in this draft. So it's actually a good spot for him.
The opposite of last year.
Yeah, last year's all slots. This year is all, X's. It's crazy. So
another maybe surprising declaration. I mean, he did make it back from the injury to play in the national championship game, but he was not productive at all this season when he in the little that he did play. So you really have to go back to the 2020 tape, maybe even the 2019 tape to see what he can be. And that's George Pickens from Georgia enters the draft. Do you think he would have benefited from going back, or is this just get it while you got it?
Yeah, I kind of feel like he may have benefited from going back. He had the one catch he had in the national championship was great, was amazing, but that's it. That's all we got. He's going to be one of the toughest evaluations for me. I just, there's a lot of questions I had that couldn't be answered this year, and it kind of remain going forward. So he could be a first round pick. He could be a 6th round pick. I feel like it could go a number of different ways this offseason with him.
Speaking of head scratching slot receivers that declared, Tyler Snead, East Carolina, 5'7", 174, enters the draft. Good luck. Devin Williams, Oregon, 6'5", 207, enters the draft. And Eric Ezekanma, we have talked about a lot. Probably a day, I think it's more than likely a day 3 receiver from Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think Devin Williams maybe was a former Southern Cal guy too. I don't know. I could be misremembering Devin Williams. I feel like I remember as a recruit. Yeah, him. Tyler Snead's been productive, but I don't see him as an NFL guy. I think as a con right now, I agree with you. I have him as a day 3, but he's big and fast. I think he could. He could play himself into the day 2 mix, but I think there are a lot of receivers in that day 2 mix. So we'll see what happens. But Ezekanma is definitely a name to watch at the combine because I think that's going to make or break his draft stock.
We've talked about the Senior Bowl a lot with Eric, and we talk about it a lot every week because it's great.
You're in Mobile. They're tagging us in all the player announcements. I feel like we're pot committed now to the Senior Bowl.
We pretty much are. We're the unofficial NFL draft website of the Reese's Senior Bowl. So if you go follow them on Twitter at Senior Bowl, and they've been breaking down all week the position groups by team, who's going to play for the American team, which is the Lions coaching staff, and the national team, which is the Jets coaching staff, and you can see which players are going to play on which team. But that led to some interesting speculation on our part here in our Draft Countdown Slack chat, as a few names have been added to the roster after the Senior Bowl was announced, had it previously announced the position groups. And we'll start with last night. Tyler Beatty, the running back from Missouri, gets added to the national team where they already had 4 running backs on that squad, which leads me to believe that one of those 4 maybe has come up injured. I don't think any of them would be bowing out of the game because they think they don't need it. But those 4 receivers on that running backs on that team are Rashad White, Abram Smith, Ford from Cincinnati, and Hassan Haskins from Michigan. So put your speculation hat on, Shane. Is any of those four, have they been injured, or maybe just some wear and tear we don't know about that would cause maybe one of them guys to bow out?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope they all play because I think all of them have a chance to help themselves. So I'm hoping none came up injured. Maybe maybe the Senior Bowl's just getting frisky and picking off some other games than the end guys. So I'll be interested to see. Man, I really hope Jerome Ford plays. He's probably the one that I really want to see, and he's probably the one I'm most feared is the guy that's injured because he played the latest and got pulled from that game at one point too. So
yeah, that feels like the easy speculation because I mean I'm not saying they won't bring in 5 running backs, but it's going to be kind of hard to get all them guys carries in a game or in practice, such as that. The reps won't be there so you feel like one of those guys are out. Another interesting development you pointed out to me this morning was when they announced the linebacker groups for each team. The national team, they listed Sterling Weatherford, the safety from Miami, Ohio, as a linebacker. Definitely has the size for sure. Was that a little surprising to you?
I was a little bit surprised at that, though. He's a really nice fit there. So I think he can play in that box. He did a lot in Miami of Ohio. So that's fun. I love seeing guys out of position, right? Like I love it. I hope we can see some linebacker, JoJo Doman, some safety, and like keep swinging it around.
So another thing I noticed when looking at those linebacker groups today, we may have noticed one gone from that national team, which may be a reason maybe they moved Weatherford down, was Jeremiah Gimmel from North Carolina was not on that roster. I went back they're not considering him an edge. So I went back and looked at defensive line to make sure he wasn't on that list, and he was not. So looks like Jeremiah Gimmel's out of the game. He was one of the earlier commits to the game as well. So perhaps an injury there for the North Carolina linebacker. But the national team has 9 listed linebackers, where the American team only has 7. But speculation on my part is that D'Angelo Malone, who's an undersized edge rusher, defensive lineman, I think you're going to see him rep a lot with the linebackers during the week of practice.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm pumped for you to go down to the Senior Bowl in that first press conference, just hammer Nagy with all these questions of, where is Jeremiah Gimmel? Where is he? You got to hit that up.
We'll see. We'll see if I'm able to attend that press conference. And last but not least, a couple of offensive linemen were added to each team, one to each team. And maybe these are just add-ons. These could maybe not injury replacements. Maybe they just want to get – because last year, and I'll say this, last year we talked about it with Jim when he was on the podcast. I can't remember what actual squad it was, but they had so few offensive linemen make it through the week that they ended up having to bring in Pitt center Jimmy Morrissey, who was training in Pensacola, had to come in, get COVID tested and everything, and worked out in the ballroom in the convention center to get ready to get the calls and everything for the line the night before with the Panthers staff. And he ended up having a decent game, but they only had 5 offensive linemen. They had to play the entire game. They had no backup offensive lineman for that game, and it showed because they got beat up a lot, and their quarterback, Kellen Mond, got sacked a lot. So did, I believe it was Ian Book was the other quarterback on that roster. So they bring in Cade Mays from Tennessee. I don't think either one of us are really high on him. He was the number was it? He was the number one overall player coming out of high school, but just didn't really get that number one overall career there. But I mean, we'll see. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? I think is a question there as well. And a guy that you're apparently super high on, Ja'Tyre Carter from Southern, coming into the game as well. Shane, tell me and everybody else what to look for in Mr. Carter from Southern.
I'm excited. He's one of the guys I was hoping would make it there. He's my number 12 guard in the class right now, and just like a really, really athletic moving guard who can play center, can pull. I really like kind of the pop that he has. So I think like zone-based schemes, I think he's a guy that can be developed. So this is a big opportunity. I think he's going to show he belongs.
All right, last non-Senior Bowl thought, but the Athletics' Dane Brugler released a 2-round mock draft today, and you didn't have to get very far down before the big shock face hits you. Number 1 overall pick in his mock draft to the Jacksonville Jaguars was an offensive tackle. That's not the shocking part. I've done it several times with Evan Neal going to Jacksonville, number 1 overall. Dane Brugler, Ikem Ekwonu, offensive tackle, NC State, number 1 overall pick in the draft, Shane.
Yeah, wow. It's surprising. It made my jaw drop a little bit. Not that it couldn't happen. Honestly, I kind of hope it does. If you go back and listen to, I think, the second podcast we did after week 1 or week 0 or whatever, that was one of the first games I watched, and we talked about him like before anyone even had mentioned him, because I was like, wow, this guy, I think he could. I probably said he could be like a early day 3 pick or something. Right now, it's going number 1 overall. But yeah, I mean, it's just a little surprising just because he's not an elite pass blocker. I think he did it this year, and that's why he's getting ranked as highly. Like, teams saw him, okay, he can be a left tackle, he can be a top 10 pick, where coming in you thought he was just a run blocker, and he's one of the best run blockers, probably the best in this class. So I was a little bit surprised. I'm a little bit surprised even at the position. I just don't think Jacksonville can take one of these guys. But look, maybe it happens. If he comes out, blows up workouts, there's that possibility is out there now. So I'm kind of hoping for it, so I can pull that clip and we can play it on the show.
He did mention that there is no consensus amongst NFL teams that he's talked to on who OT1 is. There are some that have Evan Neal 1. There are some that have Charles Cross from Mississippi State 1, who definitely a guy I think we're both really fond of. I have him as a top 10 prospect currently, and some teams have Ekwonu as number 1. So it's interesting for sure. All right, Shane, let's finish this up. We got a few chat questions here.
Yeah.
First, we have a comment, and Dwayne Lavelle said, "Is your coffee cup a Game Boy? If so, that is awesome. It looks to be indeed a Game Boy coffee cup, Dwayne."
Yeah, not only is it a Game Boy coffee cup, you probably can't tell in the video, but when at the beginning, when it was still hot, actually the ending of Super Mario Land lit up on the coffee cup. So we'll have to rock this for the next couple weeks, I think.
Nice. All right, let's get to a couple of questions we've got. G10 asked one earlier. He asked a question before this one. Hi, guys. Wonder, what do you think of Josh Paschal, who's the edge rusher from Kentucky, Nick Cross, safety from Maryland, and where in the draft do you see them? Shane, I'll start this. I think for sure, without even looking, I know that you're higher on Josh Paschal than I am. He's currently my number 10 edge, 66 overall, so which would put him in the early 3rd round for me. Like I said, I'm pretty sure you're a bit higher on him than that. Nick Cross, I think I'm going to be higher on him than you are. I have Nick Cross as my number 5 safety, but that doesn't necessarily lend itself to a higher draft pick. I currently have him at 106 overall, which is around the early 4th round area. But I'm a little bit higher on Nick Cross's. I definitely think he's going to be a hardcore special teams guy, but he can also blitz the passer out of the slot. He could even maybe be a slot, like a hybrid slot safety corner type role. I think he's going to be that jack of all trades guy that's going to save a roster spot for a team. But I think Nick Cross is probably at his ceiling, probably late day 2.
Well, I actually think we line up decently. Pascal's my edge 7. I think I have him at 57th overall. I think he's got kind of that size and that strength to be a starting edge rusher. So I think late second round, early third round makes a lot of sense to me for Josh Pascal, and I think these edge rushers will be in demand. So I think it's a good spot for him. I think he can be a starter. Yeah, and Nick Cross is my safety 5 as well. I have him at 83rd overall, and I think that third round is a good spot for him.
So you ended up being higher on Cross than I was. I was off there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think you tuned me in right when you talked about him. Finally went back and watched him, and bumped him over Jalen Petrie and guys like that. So I'm in. I'm hopping on your Nick Cross bandwagon, I guess.
Don't talk too loud about Jalen Petrie. You're gonna attract
unwanted. The Baylor guys will come
you're gonna attract unwanted attention.
He's safety 6. It's fine.
All right. Last question. A Steelers question, Shane.
Yeah.
A Steelers question. Dwayne asked, Big Ben retiring. What path do the Steelers take in the draft? I assume he means quarterback-wise. They can't be bringing out Mason Rudolph out there, can they, Shane?
Why not? What's wrong with Bray? Look, I think if Kenny Pickett is sitting there at 20, I think they draft him. And I think if he's not there, I think they pass. That's my prediction. I think they probably won't take a quarterback high in this draft unless someone falls into their lap. And I think they are going to go with Mason Rudolph for a year. Maybe they sign another veteran. They let Dwayne Haskins compete, but he's not going to win that job. And build everything else. Build the offensive line, build the depth. They have $44 million in cap space. And then I think 2023 will be to go get the quarterback. They've been a franchise that's been patient when they've needed a quarterback. They haven't overdrafted guys. They wait for that year where the guy falls to them, and that was Ben Roethlisberger, obviously. But they rolled out Tommy Maddox for how long, and that's kind of how ownership does. So I don't think they'll reach for a quarterback just because they need one. So expect some Mason Rudolph games, and your Bengals might get 2 wins next year.
I was about to say, I can tell you there's at least 3 teams right now that are grinning ear to ear with the prospect of getting Mason Rudolph twice.
Look, that's fun. Look, if the Steelers get 3 wins next year, then now you got to play Bryce Young or Cornelius Stroud for the rest of eternity. So don't count those chickens too much.
All right. We'll see. We still, as long as Joey B is on the sideline in Cincinnati,
You'll feel good.
I feel good. All right, Shane, that's going to do it for tonight's episode. Any final thoughts before we go on before next week? Next week it's Senior Bowl all the time.
Whew.
Almost next week. We'll have 2 pieces a day coming out next week where me and Shane each break down a different position group. We'll have, like I said, 2 a day coming all next week. Shrine game preview coming up, NFLPA preview coming up from you tomorrow. This weekend? That is it Sunday where we have the dueling Shrine game previews coming up. Where I think I'll have. I can't remember who's
you
got
have
one
defense.
I have defense. You have offense. So yeah, that's coming up for the Shrine game, which should get started next week with their practices. NFLPA as well will start their practices next week. Their game is on Saturday the 29th, I believe, if my math is right there.
Yep, that's correct.
So yeah, that's coming up for us, as well as a few other odd consensus boards coming out Friday, Shane. So we'll see. You will see some differences there. That's where you see the big differences on these prospects. It doesn't start that way. Everybody, the top 10 are probably pretty close, but after that, things start getting a little dicey.
Yeah, and you went deeper than I did. You went top 200, so I got to step up my game next time. I got to get past the 200 mark. When I made mine, I went a little short. So that'll be fun. Maybe we'll revisit next week.
Sounds good. Anybody, if you listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. Leave some comments there so other people can find this fine NFL draft podcast. going forward. If you subscribe to us on YouTube, get the notification bell so you can get notified when we go live each and every Wednesday night, 8 Central, 9 Eastern on this for our show. And we always love getting comments and all that on the YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Follow Shane on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. Get notified of every bit of work, daily content we have. And you're going to want to follow at Draft Countdown over these next few weeks to just because we're going to hammer the Senior Bowl stuff coming up these next couple of weeks. And so follow at Draft Countdown. Go to draftcountdown.com for daily NFL draft content. For Shane, I'm Brian. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Good night.